Blog Talk Radio.
All right, race fans, y'all know what time it is. It's Race Chat Live. Glad to have y'all on board here on this Tuesday night. Waiting on our host and partner in crime, Mr. Taz Taylor, to join us. But get ready tonight. We've got a whole lot to discuss, including Ryan Blaney's inaugural win at Iowa Speedway, some silly season news, some rumors on the schedule, the future schedule coming out next year, and how there could be a big shakeup there in the playoff races, the final 10 races of the season. Who's rumored to be in, who's rumored to be out, that and a whole lot more. Just sit tight. We're getting ready for Race Chat Live this Tuesday night. All right, welcome aboard, Mr. Taz Taylor. Glad to have you in the studio here tonight. Of course, we've got just a few things to talk about this evening. Of course, it wasn't that long ago, Taz Taylor, we were asking where the hell the Fords were. Well, I guess the Fords have showed up, and not only showed up, but they've showed out as well. Ryan Blaney captures the victory. I think a lot of us were expecting old inaugural Joey to be the victor in this past week's race. Of course, that's the guy that I had picked. So I definitely was sold that Joey Logano wins at these inaugural races. But this time, it was Ryan Blaney, and that will lead us up to possibly Taz Taylor starting the show off with a stat of the day. Taz Taylor, what would that stat of the day be?
So the stat of the day is that Ryan Blaney is the first driver to win at Iowa Speedway in all three of NASCAR's major series. That includes the trucks, the Xfinity, and now the Cup Series. Nobody can take that away from young Ryan Blaney.
And let's stop right there, because I think that most of our listeners that have been around for quite a while know that I haven't given Ryan Blaney much credit. And it was last year before he went on a run to win the championship. I was basically like, what has this guy even done in the NASCAR Cup Series other than just a handful of victories with one of the most dominant teams in Cup Series? This is the type of stats that you need to start accumulating to set yourself aside from a Jamie McMurray career versus a Carl Edwards career, right? These are the types of stats, Taz Taylor, that you've got to accumulate over the existence of your career, which means that Ryan Blaney really he's moving in the right direction. I've been critical of Blaney. The more that time has gone on, the more of a fan I feel like I'm becoming of Ryan Blaney. What is your take over the last year, the growth of Ryan Blaney, where he's at, and what he has the potential to become, Taz Taylor?
I think if Blaney keeps going the way he is, I think he could. I think he's got a long, promising career ahead of him. Obviously, the momentum he had, I think with where he was with Wood Brothers, if he kept that, if he stayed at Wood Brothers or at least at that sort of tier, I don't think he would have moved up at all. But ever since coming to Penske and had about a couple of years to kind of grow and get used to the competition level in the Cup Series with the equipment he's had, I think he's grown. He's obviously felt the lowest of lows, being that he had that long winless streak. I think it was somewhere. It came in of, what was it, 2022, Chris? He did not win at all that season, and then he won the Coke 600 last year to break the winless streak. He felt the lowest of lows, and when the winless streak broke, he felt the emotions of it. And then obviously he had the highest of highs when he went on the run towards the end of last year to become a champion. And I think he's, with Blaney dealing with the lowest of lows and experiencing the highest of highs, I think he really truly understands the true raw emotions, no matter where you are with the NASCAR Cup Series. Now he fully understands. Now he fully grows. I think he's starting to understand that he's no longer the young guy, the rookie. I think he's starting to understand that, he's starting to become a veteran driver, knows that he's got the team and he's got the confidence to be competitive on a weekly basis. And I think that Blaney understands now that if he's got momentum on his side, there ain't anything going to stop him.
Taz Taylor, when you said something about 2022 season, it reminded me that this guy got put out of the chase, right? 2022 was the year of we 16 wins, I think 17 total wins by drivers in the Cup Series. And Ryan Blaney, though he had not been in victory lane, if I'm not mistaken, Taz Taylor, he was fourth in point standings when the chase started. Martin Truex was, I believe, second in the points championship, and they only was able to take one driver in on points, and that happened to be Martin Truex Jr., not Ryan Blaney, if that serves me correct. Am I correct on that, Taz Taylor?
Yes, because that year was the first year of the next-gen car. That was when we should have had 16 playoff drivers based on wins, but Kurt Busch had the concussion and withdrew his spot that allowed Truex to get in on points. And Truex was the only driver to get in on points. And yes, Ryan Blaney was competing with Truex points-wise, and he did not make the cut.
Yeah, so, Ryan, that was the year of consistency, right? I mean, he may not have gotten a win, but he had a year of consistency. And you go to the 21 race season, I believe he had a race win. Of course, he had one as well when he was driving for Wood Brothers. So the progressiveness of this guy's career may not have been a fast incline, but as we start looking and starting, to reevaluate this driver's career, we're definitely seeing what could be, look, one thing about Carl Edwards, we knew almost immediately Carl Edwards was going to be something special in NASCAR, right? But Chase Elliott, we're still on the fence about. Yeah, he's a NASCAR champion, but him and Ryan Blaney are both NASCAR champions, and they won it fairly young in their careers. Brad Keselowski, another guy who, won a championship early on in his career. Of course, when you add that championship, you are a Cup champion, and you are now considered an elite driver. Whether or not he's had the specific stats over the last several years to be a superstar in the sport. I haven't quite seen that, but I think the coming out party for Ryan Blaney has literally just begun. It feels almost, Taz Taylor, like there's been some kind of torch pass that Joey Logano now feels like where Brett Keselowski was 3 or 4 years ago in the Penske organization, as Joey Logano basically took reins of Team Penske. And you know, it's no decline or no disrespect to Joey Logano. I'm sure that Joey's still got a lot left in his career, probably, possibly another championship. But it does feel as though Ryan Blaney is slowly but surely becoming the right hand to the captain of the ship.
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, we all knew when Brad left Penske, it was basically going to become a new era at Team Penske. So we knew that if there was a veteran driver to step up, obviously Joey Logano was the guy, being that he has been with Penske the longest of all the drivers that are currently there now. Obviously, when Brad left, that inserted Austin Cindric, and obviously Austin Cindric, the rookie, as we have seen. Of course, Ryan Blaney had to basically had to learn of how to become, instead of being the student, but kind of being the teacher, but not overstep his role of being the top leader, because he knows that Joey Logano has been there longer. He's been in the Cup Series longer. That Ryan Blaney has to understand that he's the middle guy. He's not the senior experienced veteran, but he's not the young guy anymore.
Right.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, and he's got to unseat Joey Logano as that right-hand man to the captain. But based off of stats and based off of how Ryan's run this year versus Joey, it's definitely a tip of the hat to the 12 team. They seem to have everything heading in the right direction to cement themselves as the number one team at Team Penske.
Oh, I have no doubt in my mind about that. I mean, if you look at points wise, Blaney's in 7th right now, points wise. In terms of Logano, he's all the way down in 15th. But look at the start but again, this comes down to momentum. You look at Martinsville. Blaney got the win at Martinsville to send him to the championship 4 at Phoenix, in which he won the championship. Did he win the race? No, but he did enough to win the championship. Now, take that and move forward into this year. Blaney was competitive he was the top guy in the Daytona 500. He was a top guy at Atlanta and nearly won that race.
Right.
And I think
And
I think there was 1 or 2 races after Atlanta where he was a front runner, did not win the race, but he was a front runner.
Yeah.
Then he kind of sat quiet for a bit. And then Gateway came, and it was like, all right, we're going to see Ryan Blaney win this thing. Unfortunately, ran out of gas. And then look, 2 weeks later, he redeems himself by winning it at Iowa, and he was a consistent front runner.
Yeah, I mean, Blaney could be sitting on 3. If it was a 5th, we'd all be drunk. But Blaney could be sitting on 3 wins right now in the Cup Series, tied with, I believe, 2nd place. Larson now has 4 wins, correct?
Larson has 3 wins. I think right now it's Larson, Hamlin, and Byron that have 3 wins, and then I believe it's only 1. No, Bell with 2 wins. So it's Bell with 2 wins underneath those guys.
Yeah, so Ryan could be right up there with the Elite 3, Kyle, Denny, and Williams with 3 wins. Christopher Bell has 2 wins. Chase Elliott, Tyler Reddick, Keselowski, Suarez, and Cindric all each have one win. Some takeaways from Iowa before we get into the next set of news. Of course, the Xfinity race I thought was pretty entertaining. We had some after the race activities, I believe, with Riley Hurst and Sam Mayer. Sam Mayer looked pretty freaking confident there in victory lane as he pulled his shirt off in this Superman type chest out in the, I don't know how to explain it. He's just basically like Superman, just ripped his fire suit open and you know, I guess showed the Sam the Superman T-shirt or something to that effect. The announcers called it for what it was. As I thought, the greatest camera view in that was when they were showing from Riley's pit stall on pit road as he glared down Sam Mayer. Good job, NBC. Like, that's what we as fans want to see. We want to see from that perspective. And obviously, Riley Hurst was pretty upset with Sam Mayer. And to have a camera guy there that caught the direct glare of Riley Hurst to Sam Mayer, I thought, you know, that's gold right there. That's what we want to see. You know, it's the reason why wrestling is choreographed and all this other stuff. I know wrestling's not real, for those who didn't know. But their cameras and optics and all are there for a reason. And they play into the story. I think a lot of times we miss that in NASCAR and we miss that in auto racing because we're too busy trying to either put it on the leader or what the broadcasters are talking about. And so we don't really get to see the full effect or the full view of what's going on out onto the racetrack. I just thought that for that moment, NBC really earned some credit with me for having a camera guy at the right place at the right time and the know-how to give that moment as, you know, he's climbing on top of the car, giving it from the perspective of the second-place guy, right? Very rarely do we get that perspective of how broken you are that you didn't get the win, especially in a hard-fought battle like that. Now, I'm sure, Taz, maybe were you able to catch that race? I know sometimes the Saturday race is a little bit tough for you to watch just as it is for me sometimes based off of our summertime schedules.
I did not catch the Xfinity race. I did catch the I did see post race on like social medias of how NBC caught that, so I know exactly what you are talking about. And the other thing I want to point out too, that since we're giving praise to NBC also, is during the Cup race, at one point they went side by side in terms of like, you know, commercials while the racing's still going on, so you're watching both, but it's more so of a commercial break. And the one thing that happened, I think it was during the green flag pit cycles or whatever, was when Chastain blew a tire, and it looked like he was going to cause a caution or possibly spin out or something to happen, and NBC literally cut off their side-by-side and jumped right in on the racing action to cover it. And it was like, whoa, Fox would never do anything like that. They would just let it go and let their commercials go. And NBC just said, we don't care about the commercials at this point. Like, this is the action. Like, this is what the fans are wanting. And it's like, holy crap. So I give points for NBC on that one, too.
And I'll also say as well, with this only being, I think, the second broadcast since NBC has taken it over, to not have Jeff Burton and Dale Jr., who basically have the same pitched voice, to not have them kind of ringing off of each other has really kind of felt like it's settled the announcers, the broadcasters down a tad bit. And look, anytime you're around Dale Jr., of course, it's going to change your complexities. You know, Dale Jr., he's the Jesus when he walks into the room, and everybody's going to form to him. I think now the broadcasting booth has a little bit more leeway to go back to the basics and feed off of what's going on and not off of what Dale Jr. is thinking about the race, right? Because it seemed like, you know, Dale Jr. would be in his own world. The broadcasters over the last couple of years would say something, but Jr. would bring a totally different perspective and kind of change the mood or change the way that the broadcasting was going based off of what Dale Jr. felt. And look, I mean, that's not that bad But NBC uses a lot more pieces to their broadcasting ship than I think Fox does. Fox sticks with the 3, and they occasionally go to a McNugget, and they occasionally go to a pit reporter. The broadcast team at NBC seems to be a little bit more fluid. Feels more like a radio broadcast where you have several people there that they're continuously bouncing off of. And I think that kind of, your star player's not in the room anymore. Let's compare it real quick, Taz Taylor, to an Antonio Brown, right? Let's compare Dale Jr. for a minute to Antonio Brown. That's a big freaking hot take right there. Dale Jr. walks in the room, and all eyes on me, right? And Antonio Brown, kind of the same way, a wide receiver that literally when he walked into the room, all eyes have got to be on me. Now, Dale Jr. doesn't project that type of attention, right? He doesn't ask for that kind of attention. That's kind of where the opposite comes in. They're not so much together, right? Antonio Brown, he wants the attention. He's always seeking the attention, and most of the time in a really bad way. But what winds up happening with that, Chaz Taylor, when you're on a team, like, we're sitting back, we're fans, we're watching. Oh, yeah, I love what Dale Jr. said. Oh, look at Antonio Brown. Boy, he sure is busting chops on Tom Brady. But in reality, what's happening is that team, the team that's supposed to be working together, well, they become dysfunctional because everything's always about what that wide receiver said in the news or how he perceived this to be. And I think that's kind of the way that the broadcasting team, sometimes you work better when there's not an all-star in the room. Because when there's an all-star in the room and there's a guy that's got a lot of clout, the cameras are on them, right? Do you understand my comparison here, Taz Taylor? I've gotten a little bit sidetracked, but I do feel that probably the broadcasting team is easier to manage and easier to fulfill content now that the big stigma is not in the room, right? I mean, how do you feel about that? Do you think – here's the question. Do you think the broadcasting team is better without Dale Jr.? And tell me why you think that.
So, in ways, yes. I believe so because I think with Junior out, Junior's not doing what the typical TV broadcasters do in terms of covering motorsports. What I mean by that is if we go back to the news that Junior broke out of him leaving NBC and joining Amazon and whatnot, if you go back to that, and when Junior said this on his podcast of Dale Jr. Download, Dale Jr. is not a 100% made for broadcasting. And I'm not saying he's a bad broadcaster by any stretch of the means necessary. The kind of broadcaster that Junior is that he's like a track announcer. For example, when you go to your local racetrack that also broadcasts races on a weekly basis, like say for my home track, Honda Speedway, you have your track announcer, but your track is also broadcasted on a streaming service on a weekly basis. So when the track announcer, when something happens, so the track announcer, essentially Dale Jr. is like the track announcer. He's watching the race from outside his viewing point. He's not watching some TV screen and calling the race from there. He's watching what's happening live in front of him. And then occasionally, yes, at times, he does watch the TV screens. Like, obviously, on road courses, you're not seeing the whole track. So he's going to have to see what's going on the TV screens. Or a track such as, like, and Chris, I'm sure you can back me up, Talladega and Daytona. You're not going to see the whole track from where you're sitting. He's going to have to pay attention to a screen in front of him to kind of help him out cover the race that he's covering. But, again, back to what he basically is. He's basically a track announcer. Now, if there is like a caution or accident or something happening on the track that forces a replay, Dale Jr. is going to look at that TV screen and explain the replay of what's going on. If you look at the typical race TV coverage, like Fox with NASCAR or NBC with IndyCar, and now they'll be jumping over to Fox starting next year, and NBC, obviously with NASCAR, a lot of it is more you're paying attention to the screens in front of you. You're not watching so much of what's happening on track. So I think with Junior getting out of NBC, it kind of it takes the disruptor out of what you are supposed to be doing.
Thank you. That exactly. Taz Taylor, you basically you run 5 wide receivers. You got 1 quarterback, right? So there's not much controversy at quarterback unless there's a better quarterback that's sitting behind the top quarterback. But with receivers, you have to throw the ball out there every now and then. And when you got a disgruntled receiver like a Des Bryant or Antonio Brown or maybe a Ocho Cinco, those guys are going to be pretty loud at you. They're going to be like, "Hey, I want the ball!" Like, I want the ball. And so, and you as a fan, you're like, hey, get that guy the ball, right? Well, that seems to be how kind of the broadcast booth was with Dale Jr. in it. Let's give Dale Jr. the ball. And he's not the quarterback. The quarterback is, basically, I don't know who the quarterback is for the. I would say Mike Joy would be the quarterback of the broadcasting booth with Fox. But maybe, maybe Rick Allen. Who's the guy that leads the broadcast with NBC? Alan Bestwick, I think, would be the quarterback of the room.
Is it Rick Allen the main guy?
Yeah, it may be, but I get them so confused on the NBC side. Of course, it's just been a couple of broadcasting. And as I said, they're really good about dispersing the ball as we continue our NFL football
it's Rick Allen.
Comparisons here. It is Rick Allen. Okay.
Rick Allen's the quarterback there.
Yeah, so and what I mean by that, he's the experienced broadcaster, right? You've got your receivers, you've got your Jeff Burton, your Steve Letards, and your the other guys that are kind of the field reserves. But your main guy, the main guy that's kind of creating the broadcast booth is, of course, Rick Allen. And so it's up to him to kind of to share the ball around, to disperse the ball to where it needs to go in that broadcasting booth. Very interesting to have that kind of analogy toward Dale Jr.'s broadcasting. And look, this wasn't even a subject that I really thought we were going to harp on, but this is how the show rolls. You noticed that the NBC broadcast was a little bit better, right? You noticed that the camera shots were a little bit better than what we've seen from Fox. And, I felt that things are running smoother in the broadcasting booth without the big guy in the room. And I think that makes it a little bit easier. Jeff Burton doesn't have to worry about losing his job anymore, right? I figure that Jeff probably thought, they're going to pick this guy over me, and then Dale Jr. Picks Amazon over over his friends at NBC. I think NBC had made a large investment into Dale Jr., but Dale Jr.'s guy, he can make his deals wherever he wants to. Taz Taylor.
And one thing I kind of want to mention, too, is that I don't think you and I are sitting here saying Dale Jr. is a bad broadcaster by any means necessary. I think Dale Jr. is a good broadcaster. I just think that Dale Jr. and NBC didn't mix in the way that NBC wants it. And I don't think Junior will fully mix in with Fox. Maybe him and Amazon will, and Amazon will probably give him the freedom of Dale Jr. being Dale Jr. Again, he's basically the track announcer. He's the track announcer.
He's the quarterback.
That's the kind of guy that Dale Jr. is.
Right. He's a podcaster. I don't know if you can call Dale Jr. a broadcaster yet. He's a podcaster, and he's used to managing the room. Taz Taylor giving me chill bumps because we're really in something that I really, really enjoy, and that's broadcasting myself. I do announcing. I've worked hard at this trade. It's taken me 12 years, and I've had certain mentors outside of racing that I've tried to, mock and act like. and everybody knows I probably don't miss but 5 episodes of Cowherd all year long, and most of them is when Doug Gottlieb is sitting in the chair while Colin Cowherd's out on vacation. But there's another guy that's been around a long time, since I was a kid, and that's Dan Patrick. And the older that Dale Jr. gets, and I know Dan Patrick had a big hand in this whole broadcasting idea from Dale Jr., because Dale was really big friends with Dan Patrick, and it was more than just in other words, Jr. had a lot more respect for Dan Patrick than I think that, a relationship that he had with him was different than he had with most of the news world, right? It's maybe because Dan Patrick had a little bit of interest into racing. As a matter of fact, Dan Patrick was, before he was the Sports Center did Sports Center, he was at CNN, which is there in Atlanta, and of course, right here in racing community and culture. So I think that there was kind of a mutual respect between those two individuals, and I feel like Dale Jr. probably, and this is something that we should ask Dale Jr. Do you find yourself more like a Dan Patrick versus maybe a Colin Cowherd? And I think that he would definitely say that he mocks more of the way Dan Patrick kind of has it. So, and of course, Colin Cowherd has a sidekick, old McIntyre, right? Douchebag McIntyre. He had the wonderful Joy Taylor, who I thought really helped Cowherd's show blossom into what it is today. But Dan Patrick has the Danettes. He has 4 guys that he's basically quarterbacking to, right? We're going back to the quarterbacking. You can tell I'm missing some football in my life. So Dan Patrick, he's got the Dan Patrick show and the Danettes, right? Four guys that help Dan build a show every week. And I think that that's going to be how Dale Jr. manages this new broadcasting team over at Amazon. When you're signed on to do something and you're walking into a room of guys that have been doing this 15 and 20 years and are already an established network, you kind of have to get in where you fit in, Taz Taylor. But when you are being hired as the developer of this network's broadcasting team, well, now all of a sudden you've moved into the role of Mike Joy. You've moved into the role of Alan Bestwood. You've moved into the role of said Rick Allen, right? Dave Moody. You've now found yourself, the head honcho there of the broadcasting team. And I think that that's exactly what Amazon had in mind, and the reason why we know who their first broadcaster is versus anybody else that's going to be on that team. Man, that was long-winded. Anything else to add to the broadcasting team or the coverage that we received this weekend?
I am interested to see what will happen when we get to the road courses. I believe the first road course NBC covers is in 2 or 3 weeks when they go to Chicago for the street race again.
Right.
So, I don't know. I mean, if you remember last year, they had obviously spread out the broadcasters into different stops. With Dale Jr. out, does that mean they pull in somebody from MRN or somebody from the radio side of things? I know they did last year with Dale Jr., but does that mean somebody pulls a double duty move with an MRN commentator or MRN broadcaster? Do they bring in a second MRN guy?
I'm trying to think of what the guy's name was that they brought in to the broadcasting. He's one of my favorites, too, over at MRN. I can't think of his name right now, but they did bring him in. And I believe the plan as well is to bring in Lee Diffie. The IndyCar announcer.
So, I mean, I'm interested to see what they do with the road course coverage.
Alex Hayden, I believe. I'm so sorry. I'm walking all over you, Taz Taylor. I apologize. Alex Hayden, I believe, is the guy that they had on the broadcasting booth last year. at Chicago. And once again, Taz, I'm very sorry. I do not mean to be talking over you here tonight. What was that you had to say, sir?
I'm just interested to see what they will do. Like I said, will they bring in a second MRN guy? Because remember, last year, as you said, they brought in Alex Hayden, but that was with Dale Jr. This year, are they going to bring in just one MRN person and have somebody, have everybody do a little extra work, or are they going to bring in a second radio broadcaster to kind of do the coverage? And I know Alex Hayden last year, he had the wonderful aspect of sitting right in the spot where it was like turn one, and I don't remember the exact turn, but it was literally like the neighboring corners, but going different directions. So he saw the action from the start-finish line into turn one, and then he had the action behind him. I want to say it was probably, I'm trying to think of the corners here. Turn one was a lefty, 2 was a righty, 3 and 4 were right on top of each other. I think it was like he had like turn 1 and turn 6. So he had the wonderful knowledge of and the luxury to do 2 spots in one sitting. So maybe they'll do that again. And who knows? Will somebody take over Dale Jr.'s spot and everybody does a little bit more work? I don't know.
Right. Well, do we have the broadcasting numbers there in front of us? I think it was 2.3 million watchers for the race at Iowa.
Adam, let's see what Adam Stern's got. Let's see. Oh, right here. Adam Stern, USA Network got 2.693 million viewers for the first ever Cup Series race at Iowa Speedway, the most watched sports program of the week on U.S. cable TV and most watched Cup event on cable since Pocono last summer.
Wow. I mean, those are extreme numbers considering we're in playoff time. We're in the championship finals time with the the NBA and the hockey. So very interesting. Obviously, ratings have been up this year, and it's good to see that an inaugural event found itself in the win column there, right?
I would say that's a win in its own right.
Yeah. Well, let's get into who finished where. Of course, Ryan Blaney won the race. William Byron with a second place finish. Could William have tracked Ryan Blaney down with a few more laps? I believe that could have been an issue. I think that the racetrack itself held together great. I think first concerns when you watched practice was there could be some tire issues going along. And, of course, there were some tire issues, but it seems like Goodyear kind of put out the note that, hey, this is the standard that this tire should be set at, and if you go below that, well, you're probably going to have issues. And I think a lot of the Cup teams erred on the side of caution and didn't try to overdo too much off of the specs of what Goodyear expected with the tire. Ryan Blaney, as I said, won the race. William Byron second. Chase Elliott. This between Ryan Blaney and Chase Elliott, they're kind of the who's who. They look like, when you set them side by side, they used to look like twins with their hair and their mustaches. But Chase has really had a solid year this year. Nobody's talking about Chase Elliott every day. Of course, everybody's talking about Kyle Larson. Everybody's talking about the year that William Byron's having. Everybody's talking about the year that Denny Hamlin has and how he's going to choke at the end of the year, but we're used to that. But really not too many people are talking about Chase Elliott. If you go into the old Winston Cup Championship standings and you play off of those standings where everybody sits right now, believe it or not, Chase Elliott sits at the top of the old-style Winston Cup Championship point standings. So Chase Elliott is really piecing together a decent year. He is going to solidify himself as a chase contender once we get through the regular season. Christopher Bell with a fourth-place finish, That's a hell of a rebound after where they were the last couple of weeks. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., a top 5 finish. Boy, talk about a little team that needed a big boost. We've been wondering where the hell – you know what? I think Ricky Stenhouse Jr. was listening to our show last week when we gave them no respect, right? No respect for that little one-car team that they have going on there. Way to step it up, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. in that top 5 finish. Joey Logano, Josh Berry, Alex Bowman, Daniel Suarez, and, of course, Keselowski round out the top 10. Shout out there to Josh Berry, another driver that's been on the move and seems to be heading in the right direction. Unfortunately, we're still kind of in the air about where Josh Berry is going to wind up in the 2025 race season. Alex Bowman, no surprise there. Taz Taylor, he winds up on the top 10 list again.
Alex Bowman's having the quiet year. I'm waiting. If you look at it from a playoff standing perspective, I know everyone's saying, oh, Alex Bowman, probably won't make the playoffs. But in all honesty, right as we stand right now, Alex Bowman, he has at least a 1-race cushion to work with, being that he's plus 66 above the cutoff, and he's 15th in the playoff standings. So it's not like Bowman hasn't put together a great. Has Bowman put together a great season? No. Is it a good season? I would say yes. I would say this is a pretty good rebound season despite how he was last year after his injury with his back and whatnot. I think he's slowly getting his confidence back. We're seeing it. Now it's just a matter of, can he continue to raise his confidence and put himself back into race-winning form that we have seen out of him in the last few years.
Alex Bowman needs to go on a tear. He needs to go win a few races like he did a few years ago. Go win 2 or 3 races in a 6-race period. Get Alex Bowman get his name back out there. Get a few wins in the column. That way you can solidify your stay there at Hendrick Motorsports. I don't want to see Alex Bowman go anywhere. I want to see Alex Bowman at Hendrick Motorsports for a long time. But I feel like the more and more we go along, the more eyes are out to find that driver that's going to replace Alex Bowman over in the 48 team. We've got some silly season news to cover here in just a few minutes, and we're just killing time, man. It's kind of the mid-season here. I know you're probably doing a little bit different. We don't normally go over. Sometimes we don't even mention anything about the finishing order, or sometimes we even fail to mention that some driver led every lap of the All-Star event, and we don't need to start that crap again tonight. So let's finish out.
Joey Logano led every lap of the All-Star race, and we got much more to cover later on.
Yeah, a little bit. Ross Chastain finished 11th. Todd Gillian finished 12th. Good job, Front Row Motorsports. Here's a name that I'm going to talk about here in just a few minutes when we get to silly season. Justin Haley. We all thought how odd it was that he jumped out of his ride last year, the 31 team, the team that really put Justin Haley on the map, and went over to Rick Ware Racing. Well, are you ready to hear about where it is rumored Justin Haley may be headed to in the 2025 race season? We've got that and a whole lot more coming up here, along with we're still not going to discuss Joey Logano's win at the All-Star race where he led every lap. Carson Hocevar finished 14th. Martin Truex Jr., 15th. 16th, Noah Gragson. 17th, Bubba Wallace. 18th, Chris Buescher. 19th, Austin Dillon. And 20th, Harrison Burton. What's funny about some of those names that we mentioned right there, Harrison Burton, his career is in question. Noah Gragson, in question. Truex Jr., we know a little bit now about what's going to happen with Martin Truex Jr. and the vacating of the 19 car. I guess that's how we'll kick the silly season conversation off here in just a minute. Todd Gillian just signed an extension. Justin Haley, question mark. Carson Hocevar, question mark. Josh Berry, question mark. Is there anything else in the finishing order that you want to run over or anything else with Iowa to discuss before we head over to the silly season trailer?
I don't really think so. I think the only big notable was Stenhouse, but that's because him and his team pulled off a old pit strategy move that really ended up paying off. That's how they got their top 5 results. So and again, the whole Justin Haley, Carson Hocevar, we knew where the equipment that those two drivers are at now, where they have sat for the last few years, and it's amazing that you put two drivers like Haley and Hocevar, who you would think of like, well, why are they in like very crappy rides? Well, they're turning those very crappy rides that we question and making them look like they're top 15 weekly competitive rides and turning some heads there. So I mean, that just says it right there.
Well, and it does. Justin Haley. First of all, I believe Carson Hocevar is not really much of a question mark. He seems to be moving in the right direction with Spire, moving Spire in the right direction. Corey LaJoie would be the guy that I would fear may be out of a contract here at the end of the year at Spire Motorsports. Let's start with, first of all, Kyle Busch had made some remarks regarding the vacating of Martin Truex Jr. from the 19 JGR race team. He is not moving to another race team. Martin Truex Jr. has decided to retire. Now, Kyle Busch was asked about how he felt about going back to JGR with the vacating of Martin Truex Jr., and Kyle really had an interesting tidbit without, direct quotes from him. Basically, if Hendrick or JGR would want him back, it would definitely be something that he would consider. Now, Taz Taylor, a lot of people said that I was reading way too much into what he said based off of he has a contract for his ride next season. Taz Taylor, I am going to stand here and say that to remind everybody, Tyler Reddick signed a contract 2 years before he was even ready to ride. And guess what? When it was all said and done, just as we said, Tyler Reddick did not spend one more season at RCR. He eventually went on and got his release and moved over to 2311. If you want to talk about a driver that did finish out the year and signed a whole year in advance to go to another team from RCR, let's talk about Kevin Harvick. Kevin Harvick, also another driver who signed a contract well before the next season's contract had even started. So is it off the wall to believe that Kyle Busch basically wrote the writing on the wall that I am not happy at RCR and would be willing to entertain at any point in time an offer to go back to either one of the organizations that he had left before? And the way that he said it was almost in a desperate, I wish I was in that equipment again. Pat Taylor, what are your thoughts?
It wouldn't surprise me if Kyle Busch were to try to extend any offers out to race teams to try to jump ahead. But I do believe as of right now, Kyle Busch will be with RCR as of through 2025. The question is going to be 2026 and further. Is he going to, go anywhere else? There's a possibility. Is he going to, knock himself down to, like, say, the Xfinity or Truck Series to kind of get things going for Brexton, maybe, instead of running a heavy Cup schedule? There's many different questions in the air with Kyle Busch. I do think he's not done yet in terms of, I think he's got about another 5, I won't say 5, at the very most another 10 years in terms of, being competitive, because we know Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch ain't giving up until he knows it's time to basically hang it up.
He's super competitive.
I mean, look at it. Look at it in the Xfinity Series. He knew dang right he was going to keep on going with Xfinity, and he was going to keep going with trucks, and he still keeps going with trucks because he knows he's still competitive there, regardless of what the field looks like in comparison of Cup versus trucks. He keep going with Xfinity up until he knew his time in Xfinity was done, basically when he stopped dominating and stopped being 110% competitive in the Xfinity level. So,
right.
So at this point, we know Kyle Busch, he'll be in the Cup Series for another 5 to 10 years. And when he's ready and when he's ready to give it up, we know it's because he knows it's time to give it up. So in terms of other teams for him to go, right now that's up in the air. I mean, we have to look at see what's happening with Joe Gibbs in the next couple of years. Only because looking at Denny Hamlin, I know he signed a multi-year extension as of September of 2024 with Joe Gibbs, but how long is that multi-year deal? There lies the question mark. Let's look at 23. I'm going to look at 20. Now I'm going to look over at 2311 Racing because Denny Hamlin made a remark with Truex retiring. He would open up his third car that's not chartered. Let me put that on the record. That's not chartered for Truex to qualify for the Daytona 500. All right, now with 2311 Racing contracts, we have Bubba Wallace. He's
up at the end of the year.
He was signed a multi-year. He was signed a multi-year extension to remain with the team as of August of 2022, and according to J-Ski, right now they are expecting him to return in 2025. So it looks like the 23 team is set. Looking at the 45, Tyler Reddick. They don't have details of how far out Tyler Reddick is signed for, but they're not saying that anything will change for Reddick for next year. So is there a possibility that one of those two guys could be gone at the end of 2025? There's a good possibility. Or there could be the possibility of 2311 grabbing a third charter, having the seat warm for somebody, and Denny Hamlin says, hey, Kyle, why don't you come run for us? We'll keep you competitive.
Right. So that's some of those silly season rumors that I heard was that Rally Herbst and Monster Energy were in cahoots with 2311 to buy a charter and field cars out of the 2311 race shop. Now, that's a little bit above my pay grade.
There have been rumors that ever since Truex retired, there have been rumors that Gregson and Joe Gibbs could work out a deal with Bass Pro to put Gregson into the 19 car. There have also been rumors that Chase Briscoe could be linking himself with Joe Gibbs and putting himself in the 19 cars.
That's a done deal. Chase Briscoe to the 19, from my understanding and my connections have all confirmed that Chase Briscoe is the driver that will be filling that seat in the 19. That deal had been worked out before all of this come about and was announced. So we should be expecting an announcement. Now, I've heard this before, but we should be expecting an announcement sometime in the next week or so that Chase Briscoe will be headed to the 19 car. Now, one of the drivers that's part of this demise of SHR is Josh Berry. And the Josh Berry rumors are very, very quiet and not too much noise going on, which leads me to believe there's no news to report for the 4 team, for Josh Berry, for Rodney Childers, because they are already set. They already know where they are going next season. I believe, Taz Taylor, and I'll put $1 on a donut hole that Josh Berry and Rodney Childers, and the whole 4 team is headed, probably number and all, to Front Row Motorsports. Now, are you surprised by that? First of all, are you surprised at the Chase Briscoe and the fact that Joe Gibbs Racing has some talent from his talent pool that he could pull from, such as a Eric Jones or a John Hunter Nemechek or, Corey Haim maybe even bringing home Noah Gregson, putting him back into a Toyota again for the third time. Are you surprised with the Chase Briscoe signing? Because I'm pretty sure that is for sure a done deal. I'm more for sure that Chase Briscoe to JGR is for sure than the Josh Berry for sure. But I'm also very confident that the Josh Berry, the quietness around the Josh Berry camp is because it has been reported already that Bob Jenkins himself from Front Row Motorsports went to the SHR shop and said, I am bringing some of you guys with me. So they were, that was a day in the shop after the announcements that, look, SHR shutting down. In order to kind of calm everybody's nerves, they brought Bob Jenkins over, and Bob said, hey, I got to keep working hard, doing what you're doing, because some of you guys are going to wind up on my race team next season. And I believe that was we're signing Rodney Childers and we're signing Josh Berry. And that was the reason why Michael McDowell was seeing his way out of there, because he knew that Josh Berry was the big guy that was going to be on the hill with the investment from Motorsports. Now, back to the Chase Briscoe. How do you feel about Chase Briscoe taking over the 19 car? Though it's not been announced, I'm willing to run a spread on this. What do you think? Do you think that that's a good move for Chase Briscoe?
I could see this being a good move. I've not seen that Stewart-Haas for him was a bad move. Obviously, he was going somewhere with Xfinity. Then when he went to Cup, he obviously won at Phoenix with Stewart-Haas at the Cup level. I think it was the first year of the next gen, if I'm remembering correctly.
Right. His rookie year.
I mean, so he is a proven winner. I think ever since then, just SHR as a whole has kind of fallen off, and now they're slowly on the rise, even though that we're no longer seeing SHR after this season. I think Briscoe believes he has a lot more to prove, and who knows, maybe JGR will give him the resources and tools that he probably never had at SHR. And obviously what we're seeing this year, at least, is that JGR is one of the superior teams that SHR is not. So maybe this could be the step in the right direction for Briscoe. But other rumors I kind of want to put out there as well.
Well, wait a minute. Let me comment on what you just said there, because Chase Briscoe was a prodigy of Ford. He was one of those in the Brad Keselowski truck. He was in the Brad Keselowski truck at the same time Ryan Blaney was, right? So, he was a Ford prodigy. He was, and it sucks, man, that Ford has having to take a loss here and lose such a talented driver who basically by the time he got to SHR, they were already headed down, right? Outside of the 2021 race season, where Kevin Harvick won 9 races, the rest of the teams were not very efficient. They didn't have a good year in 2021 outside of the 9 wins that Kevin Harvick. Now, when you win 9 races, it doesn't give much room for everybody to win, right? But they were just on a whole other island. That 4 team was from the rest of the organization. So Chase Briscoe has not been at SHR during the prime of its existence. But what were you going to there, Taylor?
I was also looking at some rumor speculations that J-Ski has put on their website. Obviously, we already know about Truex. He said reportedly retired. That is now confirmed. Ryan Truex is retiring, as we have just mentioned. We know about SHR shutting down at the end of 2024. And we know that Front Row has bought one of those 4 charters. They're saying Trackhouse and 2311 are so far ones that have linked to the Stewart Haas charters that will be up for grabs as at the end of this season. Obviously, we've talked about Chase Briscoe, JGR. There's also been talks of him going to Wood Brothers because Harrison Burton seems unlikely to return. As of right now, rumor is Zane Smith.
Can I tell you the rumor? Can I tell you this week's rumor at Wood Brothers?
Hold it for the end there. Zane Smith, who's currently on loan from Trackhouse and racing at Spire. It's looking like Trackhouse is trying to grab a charter to keep him for next season. SVG has made a comment that he would like to run a full Cup schedule, but in order for him to do that, Trackhouse will have to grab another charter. So there's a possibility Trackhouse could be going to 4 teams. And with that in mind, you would sit here and say, oh, they're going to grab 2 SHR charters. Well, I don't think they're going after the SHR charters because there have been rumors that Colleague Racing could merge or be sold to Trackhouse Racing. So there's that question mark in the deal. Obviously, and then drivers in contract years right now and expected to stay where they are is Bubba Wallace and Daniel Suarez. So while we have 3 SHR charters right now, we could sit here and rumor where they go, but there's a possibility that another team could be shutting down / merging with Trackhouse to settle the Trackhouse 2-car team to possibly a 3 or a 4-car team.
Wow. You there? Pat Heather.
Yeah, I'm right here.
Oh, okay, my bad. Didn't hear you there for a second. Yeah, Suarez, they're working on a deal there. Wow, the Trackhouse deal with Colleague. I can see that. I can see it as a merger, keeping the Colleague family. They're involved. That's Trackhouse may need that, right? They've got their hands in a lot of different pots at one time. Maybe they need a little bit more stable front office and bringing a race team that's been around for several years now. They have a way of doing business. They have personnel. Maybe that could help Trackhouse and become a. I think there's definitely some fall off over there at Trackhouse going on.
I think this could benefit both sides of this. If Trackhouse and Colleague were to merge, I think both teams need to play to their strengths. What do I mean by that? I think Trackhouse could solely focus on the Cup program, and Colleague could solely focus on the Xfinity program. And they could still work hand in hand. Let's say, for instance, if Colleague and Trackhouse were to work out some merger deal, okay, they go from 2 2-car teams to now a 1 4-car team, essentially. So so with Trackhouse, that would take care of Zane Smith. Zane Smith has a Cup ride that Trackhouse is looking for. Okay, so let's say Zane Smith to the 16 car. Again, this is all rumored, all speculation. Nothing's confirmed. So let's say Zane Smith goes to the 16 car. That's full. What do we do with the 31? Well, if Daniel Hemrick works out a deal with Colleague and there's this merger, well, Trackhouse unfortunately would have to deal with that side of the merger contract deal. So they have Daniel Hemrick. Now the question remains on SVG. What do we do with SVG? Well, you already worked out a deal for him to run Xfinity. Why don't you keep him there? Colleague is strong on the Xfinity side when they are fully focused on that. We've seen it with AJ Allmendinger when him and Ty Gibbs were battling for the Xfinity Championship a couple of years ago. We have seen I believe Daniel Hemrick was competitive when he was there in the Xfinity level. I'm trying to think of another colleague driver that was there at one point and left, and I can't think of his name for some reason. And this could also bring back, say, a driver who we know is competitive, but unfortunately did not have sponsorship dollars that maybe Trackhouse can bring in to help him out. That could be Landon Castle. That could be his small little knocking on the door of run Xfinity, be competitive, and maybe we'll see you back in the Cup Series.
Wow.
There's that little
Landon
teaser.
Castle. Man, I mean, you must be a Landon Castle fan. Pull that name out of the hat.
I've always thought Castle had talent. Is he superstar, elite talent by any stretch of the means? No, I don't believe so. But I do think he has the capabilities of, if he's in good enough equipment to, put his name out there and be a competitive driver, to be like, this is a guy we shouldn't be sleeping on, but this is a guy, we know will compete. That's Landon Castle.
Okay. We've
seen it with Starcom.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, Morgan Shepherd Racing, right? We've seen that. We've seen Landon Castle get in Morgan Shepherd's car, the '89 Jesus Saves car, and finish top 10 finishes. As a matter of fact, it was the whole bullcrap with these cryptocurrency sponsors that got Landon Castle in trouble. He was running a full season at Colleague Racing in the Xfinity Series and was like second or third in the point standings when his team had to be let go because of sponsorship issues. So Landon will take care of the equipment. I think he's definitely a good relief driver. He's probably, if you were to put him on a scale, if he were in top equipment, he would probably be somewhere right around the Alex Bowman type career. If he were in some top performing equipment. Speaking of top performing equipment, I can't help but look at this point standings here, Taz Taylor, and I noticed you picked Kyle Larson this past weekend, and I thought, man, how in the hell did you not lose that much ground to the second place? And then I looked, Kyle Larson scored 22 points, even though he finished 34. That's because of the stage points. So basically, even though Kyle Larson finished 34th, he scored enough points to put him in anywhere between the 14th and 16th place finish, Taz Taylor. Talk about a difference that stage points makes for a driver that is competitive but winds up with a bad day.
It makes these teams feel good about it, too, because it's giving not only drivers confidence, but these teams – it's giving not only these drivers confidence, but these teams, confidence, too, because they know that they're where they sit on that race day. Obviously, if you go back to how you went back to the old Winston system, let's go back to that point too, where there was no stage racing. Essentially, it's basically lap sled and where you finish, pretty much, right? So you have, say, a team like Kyle Larson, for instance, back in the Winston Cup system, who Kyle Larson, who was easily a top 5 car to start with. Obviously, he started on the pole for Sunday's race. And I shouldn't say a top 5. He was easily a top 3 car all race long. And then you have an incident that happened to him where he got into it with Suarez, or Suarez got into him, whatever, however you want to look at it and see it. That's your viewing of it. But Larson only finishing 30, what would you say, 34th you said it was? Pretty sure it was?
Yes.
So, yeah. So, Larson, who was basically a top 3 running car and only have a 34th place finish, in the Winston system, it would defeat a driver. It would defeat a team in a way, because it was like, wow, we had a third place, we had a top 3 car for all this race, and it just went to smoke because of one small little accident. But with the stage racing, it kind of helps teams, points-wise, and like, hey, you ran pretty well. Like, you ran pretty well 3/4 of the race. You have some points that helped you, it doesn't shut a team down. It still gives the team and the driver some sort of confidence, like, hey, we had a top 3 winning car. I mean, look at the points we just grabbed despite a 34th place finish.
Right. Yeah, I mean, he just lost 40 points, 37 points at Charlotte for not being in the race. This race, he finishes 34th, and you expect, well, man, that's only 3 points, But when you looked at, he had stage points. Like you said, it gives these guys a little bit more chance to take risks, right, Chaz Taylor? They can stick it in there a little bit more, knowing that if something happens, it's not going to hurt them as bad on the back end. Once again, it's the win and you're in mentality, but it also goes all the way down to the stage side, where you can be a lot more aggressive midway through the race than I think what you could have before, because you wanted to make sure you got to the end to get those critical points that were needed. And also, 15, 20 years ago, before stage racing, before the championship playoff system started, championships were decided most of the time somewhere mid-season, right? It was basically Jeff Gordon had a 300-point advantage on Martin, as we rolled into the second Pocono, But now, of course, with the stage racing and the playoff system, all of that completely changes. No other. So Harrison Burton has been rumored to be out at the 21, and I know you're all waiting on who's rumored to be in the 21. Can you say Justin Haley?
Wow.
If you haven't already heard, you heard it here first.
Wow. I mean, hey,
Just
he
a rumor.
put Colleague 31 team in decent finishes, and he's turning a very crappy 51 Rick Ware team into something this year. So
He may have turned the head of Mr. Penske. Penske's going to sign off on whoever's in that 21 car.
That could be a very good case. I mean, shoot, he did it with Ryan Blaney.
Right. All right. Well, anything that we didn't cover? Oh yeah, there's some rumors about some shakeups going on with the race schedule. It is rumored that Iowa does not have a Cup race scheduled for next year. What a bummer that would be. It's also rumored that a couple of racetracks that are in the chase are not going to be there, but I believe it's a switch swap between Atlanta and Darlington, but there could be possibly 2 other racetracks as well that are rumored to not be in the chase format. So that would be 3 total racetracks that are exiting out, and 2 new ones and 1 returning back to the playoff system, which would be the one we already know with Darlington. I'm very anxious on this new schedule. I hope that it's not Talladega that they take out. I do find it kind of disruptive that Daytona and Talladega are that close together, being just a month apart. I think it kind of takes away from those of us that are super Speedway race fans. We want if we're going to have 4 races, we want them spaced out pretty good. You know what I mean, Taz Taylor? And Daytona will never feel right in September. I think that Daytona should take the cue and go back to the July 4th race. But I'm not sure that that's in the air going to be anything coming up in this new schedule change. I would love to see it. I would love to see Daytona go back to July, leave Talladega where it is. I'm not sure that they would move Talladega out of October because if you put us in July down there in Talladega, you better have some lights because it's just people ain't built that way no more. I know that they raced at Talladega for years in July in that July heat, but people are just not built like that anymore. And without lights there, I just don't see that happening. So I'm not sure if Talladega were to be taken out of the playoff schedule, where exactly it may go. Of course, people have been jumping around about Phoenix or whatever, but Phoenix isn't going anywhere. They're, maybe in a couple of years they change that, but they're definitely not going to give it over to SMI racetrack, so you can forget that idea. We are cruising into the 8:45 time. Taz, do you have any thoughts on what you would like to see the next year's NASCAR schedule look like? I did hear on Door Bumper Clear, I believe it was Brett Griffin said, get your passports ready. Obviously, NASCAR is looking to go out of the states next year with this new and upcoming NASCAR schedule.
Yeah, I'm hearing they're going to take a venture to Canada, probably Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. That's the only Canadian track that I remember NASCAR ever going to. And, of course, the whole rumor of NASCAR going to Mexico, from what I heard, it could be a road course, which is dumb because if I want a road course race, if I want to go to a road course race, can we go to one we haven't been to either yet or haven't been to in like a couple of years, Mid-Ohio? Just to point it out there. I don't know. But that's just me. The only thing I can see with Daytona, I think Daytona needs to be one of 2 races in terms of the night race. Either make it the regular season finale or make it, as you said, the old way of the July 4th weekend race. That's the only thing I want Daytona to be for the night race anyway.
Yeah, wild card or the 4th of July race. It sets well as a wild card going into the chase. It does. That race itself sets up a hell of a run into the race for the chase, right? I think it fits well with that. If you're going to have it in any other place, I think that is where you race it at, the race just before the chase. I can see where IMS would like to get Daytona in that 10. Of course, there's tax breaks and stuff with playoff venues and stuff that states get. So there could be, a possibility. That's the whole idea behind Texas. And I believe that is maybe one of the racetracks that is already gone or will be gone out of the chase format. Texas had given Texas Motor Speedway a heavy tax break over the last 10 years because of the exposure in the playoff race that they had. I'm not sure that contract was re-signed, so it would be interesting to see in the next several weeks, upcoming weeks, how that is affected and who is in and who is out of the NASCAR 2025 race schedule. All right, Taz Taylor, so we're going to New Hampshire. This seems to be a track where SHR and Fords are really strong. It's a flat track. It's a short track. Are you ready for a Taz's hot take?
Oh, yes, because not only are you mentioning Ford in this case, but Toyotas as well, and specifically Joe Gibbs, because there are 3 drivers, 2 of them I will name to start, but there are 3 drivers of the Joe Gibbs camp who are very good at these flat track races, especially New Hampshire. So let's start things off here. Denny Hamlin, listed as a favorite. Brad Keselowski, listed as a favorite. Let me notice with those two drivers have the highest average finishes of active Cup Series drivers that are within the top 10. Hamlin with a 9.4 and Brad Keselowski with a 9.8. Everyone else is worse than 10th. The next one in line, marked as a favorite, is Martin Truex Jr. He is the third best average finish with an 11.3. Let's go to our contenders. We have Joey Logano, who's starting to slowly climb back up to finishes where we are used to seeing with him. Kyle Busch, I know he's had a downfall, but again, if Kyle Busch can find a luck in the string at any track, it's going to be this one. New Hampshire has proven where an underdog New Hampshire has either been a track that shows a very good dominating driver of the season has won, and if it's not them, it's somebody that hasn't won in either a while or somebody we did not expect. This could be a Kyle Busch winning track. And Kyle Busch has won here 3 times. Chase Elliott listed as a contender. Underdogs, we have Daniel Suarez, Chase Briscoe, and Bubba Wallace. So again, mostly Fords and Toyotas were thrown in here.
Yep, I'm looking over the list, Taz Taylor. Obviously, as I compare your list to what the Vegas odds look like, believe it or not, the top 3 is Christopher Bell, Martin Truex, and Denny Hamlin. No love for the Fords there. Kyle Larson in the 5 spot, Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano, William Byron, Chase Elliott, and Brad Keselowski. I think that's the 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, that was 10, 9. Ty Gibbs being in that 10 spot with a plus 1,600. Obviously, Vegas is looking at definitely Toyota having the competitor's edge here. It's good to see Truex Jr. still in that favorite list. And look, I don't think Truex Jr. is just going to lay down because he's retiring at the end of the year.
God, no.
Truex doesn't look like the type that just retires and walks away from the sport like a Carl Edwards.
He didn't lay down.
Going to be in a broadcast.
He didn't lay down or give up when he heard about the news of Furniture Row leaving either, and he still made it to the championship 4 that year.
Right. So I'm not expecting to see Truex just lay down. As a matter of fact, he's just as well a bid for the championship as any of them right now. Contender side, obviously the love starts to come in with the Fords. I think after what happened with Blaney this past weekend, there's no way that we can leave him off the favorites list. And I see Larson's on there. Let's just leave Larson off. Let's leave Larson and Byron off this list because they make me want to puke every time we talk about them.
All right, so I'll pause you. I will pause you because Christopher Bell needs to be on the favorite list, defending winner, and Christopher Bell has this act for low bank / flat track races. We know this. We saw Martinsville. We've seen New Hampshire last year, and I believe there's 1 or 2 other, low bank tracks that he's won at too as well. That was the 3rd Joe Gibbs driver I was kind of hinting at that I did not start out with. And I'm glad you said him when you went through the odds. In terms of Larson, Byron, and Blaney, when you put those 3 together, I'm going to throw you a curveball, Chris. William Byron, I'm with you on that one on this list because he hasn't even scored a top 10 at New Hampshire in 6 races. Ryan Blaney, however, in 11 New Hampshire starts, 2 top 5s, 4 top 10s with an average finish of 13.6. However, he has led 69 laps. Kyle Larson in 15 races, has finished in the top 5, just under the 500 mark. Finished in the top 10 7 times, hitting right about the 500 mark. Which right now, if you look at top 5s and top 10s to starts, Larson edges Blaney in this case. However, if you average finish, Larson 11.8, Blaney's 13.6. So again, edge to Larson. Now, this is where I'm going to say Blaney has the edge on Larson in this case, the number of laps led. Larson has only led 22 to compare Ryan Blaney's 69.
Damn. Well, we found the kryptonite in Larson's career. That is New Hampshire. So obviously not one of his favorite venues to go to. I like Blaney. I like where he's at right now. I think that he should be a contender, at least a contender, possibly a favorite here, knowing that this track does suit Ford horsepower, and we've seen over the last several years, especially the next-gen car, compete very well. The Fords compete very well at this type of racetrack. So,
and if you look at Phoenix, which is where Christopher Bell has also won, a low bank track. Ryan Blaney runs well at Phoenix, a low bank track. Kyle Larson has ran well at Phoenix. In recent years, yes, because he's got the Hendrick equipment. But is he as competitive as Ryan Blaney in this case? I don't entirely think so. So,
right.
but again, if you look at the top 5s and 10s in comparison to how many starts in your average finish, Larson's going to get Ryan Blaney in this case. So, in terms of that, I want to edge Larson as the favorite, but I am agreeing with you that Ryan Blaney needs to be on this list and needs to be a contender because now the question is going to remain, Chris, that we have to ask ourselves, is this a year of Ryan Blaney winning multiple races, or is this his usual case of he won one race and that's all we're seeing out of him?
Until the chase, anyway. I don't know. That's a good question. Of course, they're going to be trying to get Joey into that top spot now, because, of course, Team Penske wants their marquee, all 3 of their marquee drivers in the chase, and Cindric is there with his win at St. Louis. Of course, Ryan Blaney now in. So I think all the attention and resources will be moved to the 22 team
Ryan
now
Blaney,
to get them.
Ryan Blaney should have won at Gateway, low bank tracks.
Right. Another prime example. So let's bring in that third guy, right? Let's bring in that third guy to the maybe list, to the underdog list. Let's put Austin Cindric on here. Not too many times this year have we gone to Austin Cindric outside of a road course race. But I think by what we're saying here and how if what happened at St. Louis can dictate or roll over how well they're going to run at New Hampshire, I would definitely like to see Austin Cindric put on that list.
All right, so we got Austin Cindric on the underdog list. He's yet to record a top 10. He's averaging a 19.0 finish. An underdog I want to throw in to the cap here is Ricky Stenhouse Jr. He has led 14 laps, 2 top 10s in 16 New Hampshire starts. And again, New Hampshire is a track, as I mentioned before, you either have a driver who's been dominating the season win, or you have a under-the-radar driver that has won. Ricky Stenhouse could be that under-the-radar driver that sneaks his way through.
Do you remember how well Eric Amarola ran at this racetrack? Are we leaving a spot? Are we forgetting that Noah Gregson and the success that he's had so far this year? Are we leaving that maybe exposed there, knowing how well Eric Amarola typically ran at New Hampshire, and that 10 team has circled along with Busch? Kyle Busch is a really good one because I remember him saying, look, we circled this one on our calendar. I've also heard Eric Amarola mention New Hampshire as a track where they circled it on their calendar to run well there. Do you think that could tie over with the Noah Gregson? Are we missing out on him? Should we add him to the list? Because I do have another contender I'd like to add, but I'm just kind of left out there wondering, are we kicking ourselves in the arse by not putting Noah Gregson on this list?
I mean, I'm okay with replacing Noah Gregson and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. I have more faith in Gregson than Stenhouse.
Really?
I'm just saying.
Really?
I think so.
Really? Okay. Well, I mean, hey, I'm down for that.
Now, the contender, I hope you're thinking with contender. I'm hoping you're thinking of a Toyota out of the 2311 camp, and that's Tyler Reddick.
Yeah, that sounds like a good one.
And I believe that fills our list.
Sorry about that. The one thing, choked on my own spit. Sorry. The one thing that does kind of make me question Tyler Reddick. What does his stats look like? Because we never really said that Tyler. New Hampshire's kind of a bottom groove racetrack.
Believe it or not, Chris, Tyler Reddick currently has the 5th best average finish of active Cup Series drivers. He has two top 10s in 4 starts, average start of a 10.0 and an average finish of a 12.5.
Wow. Good job, Tyler Reddick. Way to stay under the radar. As a matter of fact, if I was going to take the odds on anybody this week, if we had legal gambling in the state of Mississippi, I would probably put my money on Tyler Reddick after looking at those stats that you just pointed out. Is there anything else left on our list? Do we have any more to add?
We have a full list.
All right. Well, I tell you what, man, the points race is heated up over there in our little pool. Looks like my son finally broke free, and he's kind of settled down in that 4th spot. I'm hanging on to the 4th spot. I've got a nice little cushion back behind me there. But Taz, I mean, you seem to be the one that's unbeatable right now as we get about halfway through the season here.
Listen, I've kept my ever since late last year with how I've thought about making my picks and what I'm aiming for. I've stuck to that this year, and it's seeming to really work and pay off. So I'm gonna keep on that roll. Yeah. I'm not gonna worry so much of
how many times have you picked
anything
Kyle
else
Larson this year?
What's that?
How many times have you picked Kyle Larson this year? How many times have you picked Kyle Larson this year?
It's only been a few, but hey, I've also picked other drivers. But hey, I've also picked other drivers too. I've also thrown in Hamlin. I do believe I picked Blaney a few times as well.
All right. Well,
I know Truex has picked once or twice. So I've thrown my hat. I've dipped my hat into many different bowls.
I know I've seen that Larson name come across quite a few times there. So, but anyway, I'm just messing with you, Taz, trying to get in your head a little bit as we're getting into mid-season form here. We should start busting off.
You can try, but don't you? You can try getting in my head, but I got my mentality set, and I'm going to keep it that way.
All right, buddy. Well, we'll see as we chase it on down into the end of the season here. Can't wait to get the first playoff started and start matching up with some of our other colleagues here. Is there anything else that we need to cover?
One thing I want to point out with our NASCAR pool for those who are listening, we are officially 9 races left into the regular season. For those who are in the pool listening to this, yes, the top 4 in points from the regular season in both groups will go on to the playoffs. The bottom people, please pay attention to this. If you do not make the top 4, you still have a chance to be competitive and compete for it's still a prize. but it's very small, not as grand as everybody's fighting for in the playoffs. It's a very small prize. That way there, we are keeping everybody involved throughout the whole year with the NASCAR pool. We did it last year when I believe Craig won that little prize in the consolation bracket. And we're going to do the same thing again this year. So, again, if you don't make the top 4 in points, do not panic. Don't hit the quit button. You will still compete for a small little prize at the end for the last 10 races. That way there, you are still involved. We still got you. That way there, it's just fun for everybody involved.
Yeah, we want to keep you involved all the way to the end, no doubt. Thank you guys for listening to the show. Of course, you can find us on all the important platforms. Download us. You can always catch us live on Race Chat Live on Tuesday night at 8:30 Eastern Time. Follow us on our Facebook page. I know, Taz Taylor. I'm not going to let you send us out tonight. I'm going to send us to the house tonight. Maybe, who knows? Hell, I may let you bring in the intro next week. Let's just try to switch it up a little bit. I want to thank you guys for listening. Of course, our sponsors, the people who have helped make this thing happen, the 110 Nation Sports family. Shout out to Ms. Lee Reed. Hopefully you listened to the show here tonight and you can give us some feedback. Shout out to all those listeners who encourage us to come out and do this week in, week out, even though we know we suck and most of our shows are probably not all that great. But anyway, I'm speaking for myself, not Taz Taylor. I think Taz Taylor is the bomb, and I think I have a bomb to prove it. Wait. There we go. There we go. All right, man. Well, we're going to take it to the house. So I'll make sure you tune in. Same bat time, same flat place. We'll see you guys next Tuesday night as we cover all the hottest topics in motorsports racing. Good night, y'all. Hey,
good night,
Taz,
everybody. Yeah.
Taz.
I got you.
I don't know if we can sign off without you saying the Tasmanian. What is it that you say, Taz?
It's the caution flag of racing radio, Chris Crane, and the Tasmanian Devil Flaggers, Taz Taylor, saying good night.
Good night, everybody. Cautionel Flaggerford signing off. How many of y'all know Cautionel Flaggerford? That's right. He's still alive. Where is the end button? Jesus Christ. I swear you would think after all this I would have this stuff figured out.